Those of you who have turned up today are the faithful remnant, whilst others might think that coming to church every Sunday through Advent, and additionally to the Advent carol service and the 9 lessons and carols and midnight mass and a service on Christmas Day gets you out of coming to church on the first Sunday after Christmas, they're wrong and you're right. So well done on being here. The good news is that God delights in our coming to worship him today, but I'm afraid it doesn't bump up your grade or get you any extra merit points. And the reason it doesn't is all to do with Christmas and what changes when Christ is born. And so we're going to explore that today. And because you are evidently the most holy and pious and learned congregation of the year, we're going to do it by diving into 2 Greek words that represent, one, what life is like before Christ, and the other, how things have changed after his coming. The first word is the Greek word paidagogos, and it means literally a tutor, or a guide, or a guardian, or perhaps most evocatively, a disciplinarian. And it's the word that we heard translated in our reading as schoolmaster, where Nigel read, "Wherefore the law was our schoolmaster." And the second word is huioi. It's the plural of huios, which means son, and it's the word that we heard translated children. For ye are all the children of God by faith in Christ Jesus. Paidagogos, disciplinarian, schoolmaster, and huioi, son or children. So first to paidagogos. Paul says the law was our paidagogos until Christ came. And the translation that we heard is schoolmaster, but that's a little bit misleading, because a paidagogos is not a boy's teacher so much as their disciplinarian. The job is usually given to a household servant of a rich Roman family, and they are tasked with walking the children back and forth to school, and at the time the children who are going to school are the sons. The boys weren't even allowed so much as to step outside of the house without first having their paidagogos, their disciplinarian, their tutor alongside them. And that didn't change until they reached the age of manhood. This disciplinarian was often harsh to the point of cruelty, and when we see them depicted in ancient drawings, they're usually depicted with a rod or a cane in their hand for the purpose of punishment, one suspects. The word describes a rather dull service job, and importantly, a job that one's charge grows out of. And this is the word that Paul uses to describe what it's like to live before Christ. We are tied to this cruel disciplinarian who will never leave us alone, doing a job that he hates and making our lives a misery. That is how Paul understands the law. The primary purpose of the law is to point out the things that we do that are wrong, not to celebrate the things that we do that are good. It's a shackle to us. It imprisons us. It had a purpose in being given. While sin has been in the world from the beginning, the law defined sin and it made it known as such. It served a custodial function with the authority to restrain sin, but what the law didn't have was the ability to set free, to liberate us from sin. All the law could manage was to point out our flaws. But there is hope that something better comes with Christ. Just as the boys outgrow their paidagogos and become free of the constraints, so too with Christ's coming, we throw off the burden of the law, our disciplinarians, Its usefulness is past. There is something new for us. And what has changed? Well, following Christ's coming, Paul can say, "For ye are all the huioi, the children of God, by faith in Christ Jesus." The translation we heard translates the word huioi, children, but Paul means here sons and heirs. It's one of the unusual times that the authorized version plumps for the inclusive language option, choosing to translate the word as children rather than its strict meaning of sons. And it makes a lot of sense. It's not that the translators did a poor job here. It makes a lot of sense because Paul is about to go on to say there is no male nor female, for ye are all one in Christ Jesus. So if you're ever going to use inclusive language in your translation, then this is probably the case where you ought to use it. And you won't be surprised to know that on the whole, I think that it makes more sense to translate this word as children, because the writers were not intending, when they were first writing, for this to be understood as referencing only one half of the population. Occasion, I kind of think that sons is a better translation than children. And it's because of what a son gets in the first century that a daughter doesn't. The transformation that Paul is trying to get at is that before Christ we were stuck under the law, which was our disciplinarian, our paidagogos, but now we are huioi, sons of God, with everything that being a son entails. Namely, a son is a person who shares the same nature as the Father. And so we, in Christ, share the nature of his Father, his divinity. A son resembles their father's character, and we, in Christ, are called to resemble the loving character of his Father. And most importantly, the son, where the daughter does not, has the right to the inheritance. Do you see the move that Paul is getting at here? We had been under the law, our disciplinarian, which only ever highlighted the things that we did wrong. But by Jesus' birth among us, by his being holy man and holy God, he shares our humanity and draws us to share in his divinity as Son of God. Now we've shrugged off the minder of our childhood, and we are fully fledged children, adult sons of God, with all the benefits that that sonship conveys. And that takes us back to the start. Why there is no extra reward for turning up to church today. And the answer is that because all that the Father has is already yours, because you are his heir. It's the same way that the Father speaks to the upset son in the story of the prodigal son. Do you remember the older son is there at home and he's just been working, and the younger son comes back after his dissolute living and throwing everything away. And the father says to the older son, "Everything I have is yours." That's why there's no extra reward for the older son, because everything the father has is already his. And that's why there's no extra reward, I'm afraid, for turning up to church today, because everything the Father desires to give you is already yours. You don't get an extra special tick for turning up today when so many are holidaying or sleeping off the excesses of their festive exhaustion. And that's because we no longer operate under the law, but we operate under grace. Under the law, you get a bonus for every good thing that you do, and equally, you get a red school master's mark against your name for everything you do wrong. But not so under the new covenant. You are now a child of God, a fellow heir alongside Christ. Everything that is the Father's to gift to you, he has already done so. And that is whether you turn up or not. You are his beloved child, and there is nothing that you can do about it. Amen.